Welcome to this first Sunday in Advent. For the 4 Sundays as we prepare for Christmas, I'm going to change the sermons a little bit, and rather than preaching on the gospel for the day, I'm going to preach on the great 4 themes of the Advent season: death, judgment, heaven and hell. So there won't be scriptural passages to begin with, and at the end of the final prayer, there are 3 questions that you might like to ponder. If you're watching these sermons as a family or as a small group, the 3 questions will probably make a good basis for some pretty lively discussion. So let's get into the very first and slightly scary topic of death. In 1948, the British novelist Evelyn Waugh, known mainly for that wonderful book Brideshead Revisited, published a short satirical novel called The Loved One. Set in Los Angeles, the novel explores the North American funeral industry and its obsession with minimising death by the careful and deliberate use of, or misuse of, language. So rather than talking about the deceased person by name or by reference to their family role, for example, our late dear dad, the deceased person is called the loved one. And this sort of language goes on and on. I remember reading this book as a teenager and thinking how ghastly Americans must have been to have used such strange language to talk about the realities of death. Of course, the reality now is that in Australia, there's a great deal of strange language used around death. The novel, The Loved One, was thought to be rather melodramatic, and as an extended send-up of the funeral industry, it wasn't particularly well received. But unfortunately, many of the death-denying language constructs that Evelyn Waugh uses and criticised have become part of everyday language in Australia when we talk about death. My current obsession is to insist that death is actually called death. In newspaper tributes, in ordinary conversation, it's increasingly common for people to speak about passing or past when they mean dying or dead. Even pets are now said to pass rather than to be killed or to die or to be euthanized. To say that my father passed in 2009 is a very strange thing to say. Did he pass by like the Queen? Did he pass a message, an examination, a secret, or something else? No, he died. We might legitimately say that he passed away, or that he passed from this life, or he passed from here to eternity. But simply to say he passed is the worst sort of euphemism for one of the peak experiences of human life and death. It's language colluding in the denial of death. Of course, there is much in our society that is death denying, and sometimes it's polite and appropriate to use euphemisms. But in general, the simpler and clearer our language is, the better our communication. Brian Melleny, an Australian who wrote a book called Lifetimes, in his book tries to explain death to children. He takes a very simple and positive approach. He talks about beginnings and endings, very familiar to toddlers, and calls the in-between period our lifetime. Everything that we know about, says Melleny, has a beginning and an end, and in between there's a lifetime. He applies this principle to insects and animals and finally to human beings as well. By clever, careful and honest use of language, Melleny helps even very young children begin to understand that death is not just a thing waiting for us, but an integral experience in our lifetimes, which begin with birth and end with death. Rather than a ghoulish focus on sadness, gloom and the particularities of death, Melleny invites his hearers to see death in the wider context of a whole life, a lifetime. Melleny was not a Christian, but his approach to talking about death is strikingly similar to that used by St. Francis of Assisi. In the Canticle of Creation, Francis used familiar, that is, family language, to talk about the natural world. So he spoke, for example, about Brother Sun and Sister Moon, about Mother Earth and Sister Fire. Francis also spoke about Sister Death. He knew that in receiving from God the gift of life, we also receive the inevitable gift of death. For Frances, death was not to be feared, but to be embraced when she arrived, because in that embrace he believed that all those who are part of the family of God come into God's nearer presence and see God, the giver of life, no longer through a glass darkly, but finally face to face. No doubt the harsh and painful last years of Frances's life helped to shape his understanding that death would bring an end to current pain and sorrow. It was therefore an experience to be anticipated and finally even embraced. Biblical references to death are many and usually descriptive, but there are a couple of notable examples of death defeated or avoided. The great Old Testament prophet Elijah is taken up to heaven in a fiery chariot. This mysterious end experience somehow expresses the continuity between Elijah and the next great prophet Elisha, and at the same time explains why Elijah is no longer present. His special treatment when it comes to death is an indicator of his importance in the narrative of God's emerging community. Even Moses, for example, dies, but not Elijah. He's transported bodily into the heavens. In the New Testament, the remarkable story about defeating death is the story of the raising of Lazarus. It's both full of human experience, Lazarus' sister's grief, their anxiety when Jesus doesn't come at once, the tears of Jesus himself, and the very real Middle Eastern experience of the smell of the corruption of the body from Lazarus' tomb. Nevertheless, Jesus calls Lazarus from death to life, prefiguring his own resurrection and totally shocking the family and the scribes and the Pharisees. We don't know what happens later to Lazarus. We must assume that he finally dies, like all that lives. St. Paul sometimes links death to sin and probably reflects a Pharisaical tradition that when the law is kept perfectly, death will no longer have power over humanity. But for the most part, the biblical witness to death is straightforward and unambiguous. Life and death go together, and judgment is something altogether other. The Advent anthem is that we should be prepared for the coming of the Christ child, but also for the coming of our own death and subsequent calling to account for what we've done with the gift of life. There are practical applications that come from the call to be ready. There are also serious spiritual applications. Death comes to us all. As the old aphorism says, the only certainties in life are taxes and death. But for Christians, the fear or anxiety or uncertainty about death meets the absolute centre of our faith in the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. God's final word to us from the empty tomb is an affirmation of life, an assurance that neither life nor death, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything in all creation can separate us from the love of God shown to us in the resurrection of Jesus Christ our Lord. Here in the face of the reality of the human experience of death is our source of comfort and hope that not even death can overwhelm God's continuing love for us. It's in this hope that we are called to be ready. Let me pray. This is the collect for the first Sunday in Advent. Almighty God, give us grace that we may cast away the works of darkness and put on the armour of light, now in the time of this mortal life, in which your Son, Jesus Christ, came among us in great humility. That on the last day, when he shall come again in his glorious majesty to judge the living and the dead, we may rise to the life immortal, through him who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Now, here are your three questions I hope they're simple and I hope they lead to some helpful thinking and discussion. Firstly, can you talk about your experience of death, both your positive and your negative experience? How has this experience shaped your attitude towards your own death? Secondly, what are the practical consequences for living that come from an unambiguous Christian understanding that death is not the final word? And third, what would be your 2-minute elevator speech explaining to people in a lift between the ground floor and the 6th floor what you believe is the link between life and death? Hope you enjoy the questions and God bless you.